Hey everybody, and welcome to Don't Copy That Floppy. I'm your host Lex, and I'm joined by my co-host
Christopher Boudreau.
This week we have all sorts of news to talk about. It's a jam-packed week with tons and tons of stuff. So I want to just
We've been very busy in the newsroom, the Don't Copy That Floppy newsroom.
Yep. You've been in your basement doing a lot of news research.
Tying up of Dan.
Yep. So I'm just going to jump right into it. For stories this week, we have an update on the CSGO Lotto deal. Also, game charts news. PewDiePie's an idiot. It's confirmed. But what does that mean to the greater gaming industry? A fake Twitter account is going to close down. An indie game company is bringing a game to Apple. Blizzard is having a really tough time with its toxic player community. Uncharted's co-director is leaving the company, and some really big news for Nintendo and the Switch. So, let's see. What are we going to start with? We're going to start with CSGO Lotto.
It's like a Scorsese movie up with these fucking CSGO people.
Oh, yeah. So, a while back when the story first broke, we reported on how CSGO Lotto was a website, I guess. Yeah, it was, I can't remember if there were a couple of gambling sites. I think one of them was definitely called CSGO Lotto. And it was a whole thing where you could take, CSGO skins and, gamble with them to get other skins or, I think in-game currency and stuff like that. It was pretty much just kids gambling. It was real bad.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And there were a couple of YouTubers, Trevor Martin, or T. Martin, and Thomas Cassell, also known as Syndicate, who have big YouTube channels and large followings, and they promoted the heck out of these sites, talking about how easy it was to win at these gambling sites and how great they were and how amazing they are for CSGO, and basically getting their YouTube audience, who again, we have a lot of evidence to believe that those were young kids, to use these sites.
Most likely.
Yes. It was then discovered through some investigation that both of these people have owning stakes in the CSGO Lotto website.
It turns out they're both scumbags.
Yeah, shocking. And they were making tons of money off of these sites. So, I want to say the FCC, right? FTC, sorry. FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, tracked these guys down and said, hey, that's against the law. We're going to take you to court.
The Federal Trade Commission, that's like what the those guys in episode 1 were, right?
Yes. Well, let's not get racist about this, okay?
Not yet.
Not yet.
We'll get racist in a little bit.
Yeah. But so those guys went to court, and we all, when we reported on it at the time, I said, good, they need to go to court. They need, I would not have any qualms with these people going to prison, because
sure.
I think it's that serious an offense, but I think a really hefty fine is certainly in order.
Mm-hmm. It needed to be treated seriously, like any other white-collar criminal.
Yes. Well, that's not really what happened.
No, it's not.
They went to court, and the FTC said, hey, you guys, don't do this again.
Slap on the wrist.
Yes, what you did was wrong, and you can't do it again, and if you do it again, it might get serious, but don't do it again. Okay, see ya.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. It's very unfortunate, I think.
Yeah, no, it's really bad. It sets a very, very bad precedent.
Yeah. I was just looking through this, how jurors heard that one 14-year-old boy lost $586 in one day. That's really skeezy.
I think when we first reported on this, I don't remember the article specifically, but there was an article that Dan and I were citing that had all of these different examples of gambling addiction and how it affects kids and ruins families and stuff.
I'm sure that kids can very easily get hooked on gambling because they don't yet have a concept of value of money. So it's just it's a lot easier to just keep on rolling the dice,
Mm-hmm. So this is, I mean, there isn't much to say about this other than
Yeah.
it's really sad and disappointing.
Yeah. Do you know what's equally as sad and disappointing? The picture of Timar Tien is probably the most white man picture, white collar criminal picture ever taken.
Oh yeah, and I'm pretty sure he lives in Miami or somewhere in Florida.
Yeah,
and just it's crazy. It's like when we were first reporting on it, there were pictures of like his house and his multiple sports cars.
Oh god.
And I was like, oh yeah, no, he's making millions of dollars off of this gambling website. That's what's happening, because that's how you afford stuff like that in Miami.
Yes.
So again, like, come on, FTC, really?
Yeah. I mean, at least they got their day in court, I guess.
Yeah, and like supposedly they won't do this again, or if they do it again, they have to disclose what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Although really, these gambling websites shouldn't be allowed to exist anyway. And to be fair, when this controversy happened, Steam did do a little bit to try and crack down on these, so the sites certainly aren't in operation now the same way they were then.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still not a great situation. I didn't include it in the show this week because I did not have time to read it, and it was a very complex and nuanced article. But there was this reporting about how the gamification of video games and how more and more elements of gambling are being introduced into them. And there was this guy who wrote this big opinion piece about how it really does mirror gambling, but the problem is that there are no government regulations really towards it, because nobody thinks of gambling when they think of video games, at least not in the way that they're doing it. And this is sort of what we talked about a little bit last week when we were talking about Destiny 2 and its loot boxes and stuff
Fucking
like that.
loot boxes.
Yep. So there's trouble brewing already in the video game industry with more and more elements of gambling coming into it. And then when you see people who straight up promoted gambling getting basically no punishment, I think, that contributes to sending this message that these kind of business practices are going to be tolerated. And that's real bad.
With the video game industry is not altruistic, and it's if someone can make money any way possible, they will do it because it's a capitalist industry. So you'll go as far as you possibly can. If this might send a signal to like the industry at large and be like, how can we kind of do something like that to make more money? Like apparently we can get away with some of that. That's unfortunate.
Though I will point out, as this article does, that this is an unhappy phenomenon, that it might be specific to the United States, because in the UK there was a similar case, and they slapped the guy who was perpetrating it with a very hefty fine. Mm-hmm. So they care more about that.
The UK seems a little more strict about that kind of like just rampant shitty capitalism kind of behavior.
Oh, I'm going to leave you with a quote from an FTC spokesperson from this article. The goal of the FTC isn't to be a punitive or draconian agency, FTC spokesperson Mitchell J. Katz told Rolling Stone. We are here to educate consumers about new markets.
He sounds like a blast to have at parties.
Oh, yeah. So, yep. That's sad. Moving on.
Hopefully it won't happen next time.
Oh, it will. It
will. I'm sure it will.
Yep. Moving on to one of your stories. Tell me a little bit about this.
It's the most wonderful time of the month. NPD numbers are out for August 2017. And it's pretty nothing too crazy on here. Madden NFL is spiked up to the top. And I'm not sure if that's like something rare or not. I don't remember Madden jumping all the way to the top whenever it comes out every year, but it could have. I don't quite remember. Overall, for the industry, spending is down since last year, about 2% from total hardware and software sales. Hardware is down about 6% over last year. Console software is down 2%. PC software is down 23%. And accessories are up, actually, 10%. That's to be expected. These consoles are getting older, and we're right before the big holiday rush. Nothing too strange here. Madden, Grand Theft Auto 5, number 2, Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, Splatoon 2. Oh, and be aware that these do not count digital sales, and these are only sales that are given by their publishers. Some publishers don't give their sales numbers, so this is a little wonky, but it's a general overview of how the industry is doing. You have Breath of the Wild still very high up there on number 5. Rainbow Six Siege, again, strangely always on top. Mario Kart 8, Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered, pretty high. Our old friend Crash Bandicoot, the Insane Trilogy, still hanging on. Overwatch, Injustice, Tom Clancy, Recon Wildlands, Minecraft, For Honor, Call of Duty Black Ops 3, Agents of Mayhem, surprised that it even got on the top 20. Battlefield 1, NBA 2K17, and UFC 2. Now, the interesting thing, and something that we've talked about a lot, is how the hell has Grand Theft Auto 5 been on the top lists month after month, year after year, since 2013 when it came out. And now it has been calculated that Grand Theft Auto 5 is the best-selling game of all time, sort of, kind of.
Sort of, kind
of. So this was... who said this? Pizzcatella, I guess, is a person working at NPD, said... Rockstar's Grand Theft Auto 5, which has been at the number 3 slot for 3 months, is back to number 2. It's now broken the record for as long as it's been in the top 10. Grand Theft Auto 5 has now been in the market 49 months, and it has achieved 41 top 10 chart appearances, 16 more times than any other single title in reported history. In addition, Grand Theft Auto 5 is the all-time best-selling game by both revenue and units in tracked sales across PC, console, and portable with digital and packaged combined. So that does not, like I said, because the NPD does not track digital sales, it does not track, a lot of other games that may be a lot higher. But generally speaking, in terms of tracked boxed sales for PC and console, it is selling the best. That is also not accounting things like Tetris, which has been on like everything ever forever.
Yeah.
And it's a notoriously hard game to track. It probably is actually the best selling game of all time because it's just been on everything. Even something like Minecraft is hard to track because it was an indie game for so long, and I don't know how well they were tracking their stuff back when it was in alpha and beta back in the day. And it's also on every single thing ever. So those things are kind of hard to track in terms of box copies. But Grand Theft Auto 5 is, Rockstar loves this kind of shit, so I'm sure they're loving this right now, that they're the top selling boxed game ever.
Well, I mean, it's certainly a good game. I don't know if it's any more deserving than anything else, but that's interesting to me, mainly because you look at Grand Theft Auto games, and it's really not a kind of game that anyone else is making. Right. I mean, people make games about gangs and crime, and some of them are more narrative driven. We see that from a couple other companies occasionally, but most of the time people aren't trying to emulate the GTA series. They're trying to emulate the Call of Duty series, or they're trying to emulate the Mario series, or they're trying to emulate any sports franchise or Overwatch or a MOBA. Yeah. But it's really interesting that like all of those kinds of genres and styles of game that are aped all the time, the one that isn't, almost not at all, is the one that's selling the best.
It is. And I honestly think it's because Rockstar are some of the only people who can make that kind of game. Like, making that kind of game is incredibly expensive to do.
Oh, definitely.
Like, just hand over fist. It's like, yep, it's a free-form sandbox game in, like, the truest sense of the word sandbox, where it's like, and you can just drive over stuff. There's an immense amount of detail in everything. There's licensed songs all over the place. It's just it's a technical marvel whenever they come out with the game, because they put a ton of money and a ton of time into those games. And I honestly think, it stayed alive mostly because of Grand Theft Auto Online.
Yeah, that's definitely a big factor.
Yeah, they consistently pump out new content for that I think I have not played it since it came out. But I'm sure at this point there's probably so much shit to do that it's like you could just play it forever. And I think there's probably a lot of younger kids that play a ton of that. And this brings up the question that we brought up a little while ago when it was some news about Red Dead Redemption 2. I can't remember exactly what, but we were talking about like the only people they're going to be fighting for control is themselves. The only people they're going to be hurting is themselves with Red Dead Redemption 2 online. You know, they're only going to be taking away from their own audience, which is an odd and rare place to be. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. Everyone owns it now. Also, kind of interesting in the NPD numbers, the best-selling games of 2017 so far. Number 1, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands.
That still baffles me. I don't. Yep. I mean, it looks.
I swear, those Tom Clancy games, like Rainbow Six and that one and Wildlands, like no one. I don't think anyone we know talks about them, but I think that a lot of people play them, and they just have their like little niche communities that just kind of hang out and buy up that shit, I guess, yeah.
So, moving on to one of our big topics of the day.
Big topics of the week.
Yeah, definitely.
The internet were aflame.
Mm-hmm. PewDiePie is an idiot, confirmed. So, PewDiePie, for those who have not been paying attention to the internet, and maybe you don't know who PewDiePie is, he's the biggest YouTuber.
Yep.
Basically.
What is he, over 50 million subscribers or something?
Something like that. And he mostly, at least he started mostly by doing Let's Plays.
Mm-hmm. That's his bread and butter still.
Yeah, and that's still like his big thing. He does some other stuff occasionally, but I think I want to say, when did this happen? This was this past weekend, maybe?
Yeah.
Yes, it was last weekend. He was playing PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds because everyone is playing that game. And on stream he got frustrated and used the N-word. So
sure.
That was great. And obviously he received a ton of backlash because he used a racial slur, which is not really okay. Not an okay thing to do.
Nope.
So he that was the thing. That was the big thing that happened.
Yeah. And then he made a response eventually, which I think that the time that he took to not respond directly was probably his lawyers having a fucking, like, grabbing him by the shirt and being like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you know, but he did eventually come out and said, you know, he said I'm an idiot, you know.
I should have known better. I keep messing up like this. Or I can't
like
keep messing up like this.
Like this, yeah.
And here's some more quotes from him. You probably won't believe this when I say this, but whenever I go online and I hear other players use the same kind of language that I did, I always find it extremely immature and stupid. And I hate how I now personally fed into that part of gaming as well, which is actually one of the best things he could have said probably on this topic. Mm-hmm. Because it is him saying, like, you know, I knew it was wrong, but I did it, and I contributed to the problem, and I shouldn't have. And I'm like, okay, that's a smart comment, I suppose. There was let's see, it was something that I said in the heat of the moment. I said the worst word I could possibly think of, and it just sort of slipped out.
That's the one I have.
Yeah, that's a weird. That's a weird contradictory statement. He said, I said the worst word I could possibly think of, and it just sort of slipped out. So wait, you were thinking about it, but then it also slipped out.
Right. And also, here's the thing, is that myself and a lot of people I know, and yourself as well, Lex, I'm sure, that kind of word just isn't in my lexicon. It's not something that I think would slip out even if I was really, really pissed. Mm-hmm. Like, because anger usually brings out, you know, weird words that you might not say all the time, but that's not one that I think would cross my path, you know, if I was in a heated gaming moment, as they say. There was one joke on Twitter, someone said, it's like, oh yeah, you know, whenever I get a little pissed at PUBG, I just all of a sudden put on my KKK robe, you know. And
oh no, that was there was a meme about that where it was PewDiePie and he was photoshopped to be wearing a full KKK outfit, and it says during most recent live stream Pewdie accidentally puts on entire KKK outfit.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. And it's just that way. Like, and I heard a lot of different takes from this. I read a lot of different takes from this, and one that I think I agree with, and because I know people like this, is the fact that if you use that kind of shit, if you say that kind of shit just accidentally in a rage, that means that you use it probably, if not regularly, then semi-regularly in your private life.
Yeah.
You know, I have a brother-in-law that is a casual racist. I don't like hanging out with him, but I have to sometimes. You know, and he says shit like that all the time, and then he always comes back like, I'm just fucking around, dude, and shit. I'm like, yeah, but you're pretending to be a racist, and you're doing it real well because it's hard to tell the difference, you know?
It's a distinction without difference, yeah.
Exactly, and it's like that kind of thing. But, you know, the thing is PewDiePie a fucking white supremacist? Is he actually racist? Probably not. I don't know the man. You know, I don't know what's in his heart. And I think he is what he said he is, which is a fucking idiot, you know? Yep. I think that he's a 27-year-old man that acts like a 14-year-old 4chan asshole, you know, and probably hears all this Hitler shit and, you know, all this N-word stuff and thinks it's still edgy to say shit like that. You know,
and that's what's interesting. I think that actually contributes to a lot of his following, and it's how I've sort of always thought of him since. So, I mean, we've talked about PewDiePie on the show before in the past because he's had other controversies in the last year.
Yeah.
And a lot of those, in a couple of those instances, we defended him because in some cases there was like a whole thing where he made Nazi jokes, and then
there was the whole Fiverr thing.
Yeah. And the Fiverr thing also, yes. Which I was less on his side about, there was a lot of instances of him doing stupid stuff and acting very juvenile. And when I first, and I've, you know, talked about on the show how I'm not really a fan of his and never have been, and not because of this stuff. Although now I'm definitely not.
This doesn't help.
This stuff. Yeah. But because when I first saw one of his videos, I saw one of his first videos, and it was his first big video where he was playing, I think it was Amnesia. And he just had his little webcam box in the corner of the screen, and when something scary happened, he just like flipped out and started screaming like a girl.
Which is not how anyone acts when they play video games, by the way.
No, it's not. But I saw that, and it made me snicker for a couple of minutes, and then I said, okay, well, I'm not interested in this anymore. And then I never looked at his channel again.
Right.
And I went back when we were doing some of these stories and looked at his content, and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much the stuff. I mean, he doesn't just do that, but that's still the bulk of what he does. I mean, he had a whole YouTube Red series where that was specifically what happened, except in real life scenarios instead of video games. Yeah. And I just look at that and I'm like, okay, this is the kind of juvenile stuff that 14-year-old people who frequent Reddit and 4chan are really into. But I don't understand how anybody else could be into that. Nobody in my age range that I know watches his stuff.
No, I don't think I know anyone around our age that either that watches it.
And that's especially sad and pathetic when you think about what his age is, because he is our age.
Yeah.
So, because if he was a 14-year-old doing this, I'd be like, okay, he makes a lot of he does some stupid stuff, but he's 14, so, like, I kind of expect it. But no, he's a grown-ass man who acts like a child because he makes money doing it, let's be honest here. And then when he does stuff like this, which is extremely juvenile and hurtful, he can't use the, well, I'm a kid excuse because he's not.
Right,
so,
exactly.
He
also, on this one, he can't make the it's a joke excuse either, which a lot of people were like for the Fiverr thing, and so when the Fiverr thing happened, Fiverr is this website that you could pay $5 to have people do like almost anything on camera, I think was the idea of it. Yeah. And he did a thing like he wanted people to hold up a sign that said "Kill all Jews," and I don't think he thought they would do it, but then they did, and so he was like kind of like, holy shit. And a lot of people are like, it's a joke. Comedians get away with this shit all the time. And I'm like, the thing is that comedians have a social contract, an unspoken social contract, where like people like Louis C.K. and Chris Rock and shit, they can say really fucked up shit because they've practiced it for decades. They're able to walk a line. It's all about timing. It's all about context. And if they're able to do it because they're so well practiced at it, you know?
And even then, there are still controversies surrounding comedians on a regular basis.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because comedians are always there to push the boundary a little bit into what's acceptable. In the comedies, in a comedy store or whatever, that's kind of a safe space, if you will, for lewd things. Because it's like, how much can we push the boundary without really offending people? Like, we want to offend people, but we want to make it funny. And PewDiePie is not a fucking professional comedian, and he's not earned the right to try to push the boundary, because that was a stupid joke that he did with the Fiverr thing. This thing is not, this current thing is not a joke. It's just him blurting out a fucking, frankly, outdated, phrase, that is like, I think just really, yeah, it's really dumb. Makes him look like a dumb 14-year-old. And like the other thing I was thinking of too is that, like you were saying, he's a grown-ass man, because I remember being 14, and like people would say things were gay if they were stupid,
Yeah.
Or you call people, oh, that's retarded,
Yep.
and like people would say that shit. But you get older and you realize, oh, probably shouldn't say that shit.
No, not okay.
Probably not the.
There's a lot of things when I was in middle school, right, that I thought were cool and edgy and funny, that when I grew up I was like, wow, in that respect I was a shit kid.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can say things were different in the late 90s, early 2000s. They were. But at the same time, the fact that you and I can look back in retrospect and be like, wow, I was a really snotty person, like that was really shitty things to say. Glad I grew out of that, like,
Yeah.
That's the difference. So yeah, I think that this is, I mean, for a lot of people, I'm pretty sure this is kind of the last straw for him. He's fucked up enough, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe his fans will put up with everything.
Well, that's the thing. Okay, so he is going to be fine, because his fans, the responses from his fans on YouTube and his fans' corners of social media have been extremely supportive of him. There have obviously been a ton of people who are very mad at him, but I would argue that a lot of those people were not watching his videos to begin with. So and I'm pretty sure he has lost subscriptions on YouTube, but even then he's still massive, so I don't think it's going to matter that much.
Yeah, I looked it up. He right now has 57 million subscribers.
Yeah, so he's going to be fine. He's gonna, even if, let's say, he got kicked off of YouTube, which we're actually going to segue into why you might get kicked off of YouTube in a second. But even if he did get kicked off of YouTube, he could easily go to Patreon or some other video service, and his fans would just follow him.
He could make his own fucking video service.
Yeah, and he would still make plenty of money, and he'd be fine. Or he could actually just retire and still be fine. There's really no scenario here in which PewDiePie is not totally all right.
Right. Yeah, for saying the N-word.
Yeah. Which is frustrating, but what's more frustrating is how this affects everyone else. So, when this happened, and we're going to segue topics a little bit here. When this happened, a game dev, Peter Veneman, I believe, who is one of the heads of Campo Santo, the people who made Firewatch.
Yes, former Telltale employees.
Yes, he came out on Twitter very strongly against PewDiePie when this happened. I don't know if I have his chain of tweets. They're kind of fantastic. No, I do not have them right now. But if you want to bring them up and read any of them, they're like, I remember basically what he said, but reading them verbatim is like really fun because he was like brutal. But he said, listen, PewDiePie is no longer allowed to stream or have videos of any of our games. We're going to DMCA strike the Firewatch videos he has already put out, because we just don't want to be associated with this guy. And he talks about, because there's a long Twitter thread, he talks about how a lot of game publishers and game devs allow people to stream stuff, even though there's that is technically copyright infringement. But it's okay with the publishers and the devs because they're basically getting free publicity, so they go along with it. And normally he really likes streamers and supports a lot of them and what they do. But in this case, he's just saying like, listen, I know that I probably made money off of PewDiePie when he streamed Firewatch because of how many views it got and how much exposure it got from that. And that's a failing on my part. and I don't like that's something I have to live with, which I thought was a pretty interesting statement to make. Yeah, and he and he calls PewDiePie childish, and he says he can't believe that this child keeps getting away with shit like this, and that's one of the reasons why he decided to issue this DMCA strike.
Yeah, I did bring up his Twitter.
Oh yeah, if you want to read some of those,
there's a lot.
Well, that's true.
But
yeah.
Just a couple choice ones. He says he's worse than a closeted racist. He's a propagator of despicable garbage that does real damage to the culture around this industry. I'm sick of this child getting more and more chances to make money off of what we make. He says there's a bit of leeway you have to have with the internet when you wake up every day and make video games. There's also a breaking point. And yeah, he's going on to we're filing a DMC takedown, all that.
So
yeah,
this also kind of feeds into something that happened earlier with PewDiePie when we mentioned the Nazi jokes that he made and the Fiverr thing. A lot of people who are on YouTube or follow YouTube stuff very closely say, okay, that was what led up to the, air quotes, Adpocalypse on YouTube. I can't believe it's called that. It's so stupid.
Yeah.
So the Adpocalypse is this thing where a lot of advertisers pulled out of YouTube, specifically shortly after PewDiePie did stuff like this, because they looked at it and they said, okay, well, if the most popular guy on your platform is saying stuff like this, we as advertisers cannot be associated. And YouTube has been
and that's their choice to do that.
It's definitely. And YouTube has been trying desperately to mitigate that. They set up all of these new algorithms, and it's caused tons of problems to try and assuage these advertisers, to prove to them that YouTube is not awash with all this hateful content. And that it is safe to advertise, and making sure the videos that go up that could potentially have stuff like this get banned or just not monetizable. And that's certainly a thing, and it's sort of been working, but mostly it's just been causing problems for like tons of smaller YouTubers, because which
seems to always be the case no matter what changes what YouTube does. When they change something, it destroys a whole section of their user base, essentially.
Some commentators have talked about how this is YouTube's heavy reliance on algorithms has hurt them. If they just hired more staff and went through more stuff with people, it would probably avoid a lot of these issues, which I think is true. I mean, it's a fair argument to make that YouTube has to deal with megatons of videos being uploaded every day. That's certainly true, but at the same time, they're an extremely profitable company. So
it's Google.
Yeah,
things are doing fine.
So that's a whole thing, and now this DMCA takedown is important, not just because of Firewatch or just because of PewDiePie, but because DMCA takedowns are something we've been talking about a lot lately. I think when we were talking about Alex Mauer this past summer, DMCA takedowns were a big focus of that.
Mauer.
And the reason why people were so upset at Alex Mauer for issuing all of these DMCA takedowns is because YouTube almost always sides with the person issuing the takedown. And if you're a YouTuber and you get 3 takedowns, then your channel is offline. And you cannot, I think it's difficult to even start a new channel. So it's a really, DMCA takedowns are a really big deal, which is why some people went and criticized Campo Santo for doing this. They said, Campo Santo, on your website, you specifically say that it's okay for people to stream your games, so how could you go back on that just because of this one guy who said something you don't agree with? And it really brings into the spotlight the legal situation of video games and copyright.
Yes.
So, so actually, did you want to expand on that? Because you feel free.
Well, I was just going to say that, yes, it does bring it into light, but it's always been clear in that Let's Players have no rights to the shit that they're putting up.
No.
Everything is at the behest and at the pleasure of the content creator, which would be the studio, Campo Santo, or the publisher, or the rights holder, like Disney or whatever. There is no... I mean, you saw this not that long ago with Nintendo, when their mishandling of YouTube Let's Players, and the fact they tried to set up this whole Nintendo club thing where they're like, oh yeah, and you'll get half the profits, we'll get half of it, and all this stuff. And it seemed completely, draconic and backwards because it was. But at the same time, there's never been a point where streamers were in the right. They are allowed to stream because their content creators allow them to do it.
Yes.
So, and think what you want about the Sean Venom and Camposanto thing. Like, they are 100% in the right. Like, it's their content. They can fucking cut that shit off as soon as they want,
And a big reason for that is because of how fair use law works currently. And how there really aren't a lot of laws that specifically deal with video game content being shared in the way that it is online, because, lawmakers have never been on the ball about anything technologically advanced, and they're certainly not on the ball with this.
Yeah, it takes a long time to roll out legislature for that kind of stuff, and video games move very fast. I shouldn't even say video games, but video game culture, the culture of sharing video games and Let's Plays and all that crap moves incredibly quickly.
Yeah, so it's leading to a lot of worry from a lot of different YouTubers, because again, in all these instances that PewDiePie seems to be the instigator of, PewDiePie is gonna be fine. He could lose his entire YouTube gaming channel, and he could have completely no ability to make any videos, and he's gonna be fine. But if this precedent gets set so that ads are ruined for everybody, and it's really hard for Let's Players to post games, that screws over so many smaller channels that didn't ask for any of this and have been decent people who've been playing by the rules this entire time. So through no fault of their own, this could come down on them really hard. And one of the ways it could come down on them really hard is if a lawsuit happens, and that's what a lot of people are worried about. So it's probably not, luckily, because PewDiePie is not that stupid. He's stupid, but he's not. This is not a hill worth dying on. So people are worried that at some point what's going to happen, or what could have happened here, is that PewDiePie could have sued Camposanto to have the rights to put up this video on YouTube under fair use. And
this is it for all of anybody that doesn't know. Fair use is a defense. It is not a law.
Yes,
it is a method of defense. Against such things. And
the idea is that you're posting this content that's somebody else's, but the way you're posting it is transformative in some way, and that's what allows you to do that.
You're always on a back heel when it comes to DMCA shit.
Yes. So he could use that as a defense, and then if the judge ruled in his favor, then I guess that could be great, because it would be easier for people to post YouTube stuff, because there would be more of a precedent. But if he lost and the Camposanto people won, which seems like it would be much more likely to happen, then a lot of footage on YouTube would suddenly be in jeopardy, because a lot of bigger companies like your Nintendos and your Sonys would...
Your Viacoms.
Would suddenly look at this. Oh, and your Konamis. Definitely your Konamis.
I don't even know if they know the internet exists.
I mean, if it's not a pachinko machine, they don't care. But no, all those big companies would look at YouTubers and sort of wring their hands wickedly and say, oh, looks like we got the rights to all these videos now, and there's a definite precedent for it. So there would be a lot of videos going down, and that would be horrible for YouTube and for Let's Plays. I mean, it would basically destroy Let's Plays as a concept.
It could. The only thing that I would assume might happen, or has been happening, is that I think that while massive battleships like Nintendo and Sony, which are very hard to turn around and steer, there are a lot of not even smaller but middle class kind of developers and publishers that I think very much realize that free advertising is great, and that's what Let's Plays are for them. If PewDiePie, if the Game Grumps, if Markiplier or whoever, or even fucking Day9 streams some game unsolicited, that's fucking advertising gold. You just tapped into a whole user base, a dedicated user base that cares about what these people think. And if they can watch the game for a little bit, they're much more likely to buy it. One of the biggest things probably in the last 10 years has been, or maybe not that long, but 9-8 years or so, one of the biggest things when it comes to developers talking about a game is how well does it stream? How well does it let's play? You know, like, is this game a very streamable game? Because that'll definitely push it forward in terms of marketing. So I think that if these kind of things happen, I don't think it would be the end of let's plays altogether, because I think there'd still be a lot of companies out there that realize the value of that kind of marketing. And it's more, the value is higher than having some idiot say the N-word every once in a while.
Yeah.
Who also happens to be the biggest let's player in the world.
Yeah. Okay, well...
What is it with these super fucking popular YouTubers that just turn into weird racists? Why is this happening all the time?
I don't know. I think that it speaks to what we were saying earlier about their juvenile sort of nature, and how that and how that's the audience that's on YouTube already, so they appeal to that, and that's how they get boosted up. But they were never really great people to begin with because they acted that way.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and a lot of them probably do come from like 4chan and that kind of breeding ground for weirdos.
Oh yeah,
no offense, slash all the offense mean to 4chan.
Yeah, no, we've talked about 4chan in the past on the show, and we pretty much hate it.
Yep.
So we have a handful of stories. I want to sort of breeze through the next 4 stories as quickly as we can, because none of them are particularly big, and we're a little low on time. Yeah,
we talked about PewDiePie for too long. So the next one, very quickly, if you know, there is a great Twitter account called CEO Kaz Hirai, which is a fake account of used to be the president of Sony Entertainment, or I should say, he was the president of the PlayStation division of Sony. Now he's the president of Sony, and basically the guy that did it, or the girl, or the people, I don't know. They just make jokes about Sony and video games and things, and it's been hilarious for a very long time, and it's been around for a long time. But the account is closing down next year, and the reasons why, basically just saying that they don't have a lot of time for video games as much anymore, and they don't have times to construct good jokes, but they do want to do one more year. They want to go through one more E3 press announcement cycle. And then they'll be closing it down. So if I've been a fan of this fucking Twitter for a long time, and it is good. It's good shit. So it's sad. It's the end of an era. It's good. It's sad to see him go.
Always sad to see good games satire leave.
Yeah.
Too bad.
The funniest thing about that, though, is that like it got so big that their multiple Sony press conferences had that account like on the back screen while they were talking and stuff. They were in on it, which I thought was great.
Nice. What about this? What about that game company's?
That game company? That game company?
Not this game company.
Not this one. That one. So that game company, who are most known for making Journey and Flower, which were PlayStation exclusive, kind of very artsy games, head up by Genova Chen, who's kind of a famous indie, or I shouldn't even say indie, but kind of AA developer, designer. Their next game, it got announced. It's called Sky, and it's only coming to Apple products, and that's pretty crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, good for Apple, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good catch for them, I suppose. So yeah, the next game called Sky, it's coming to Apple TV, iPhone, and iPad. He was on stage during the iPhone event, the most recent iPhone event, where I think they announced like the iPhone X or some shit. I don't know. I don't use iPhone or Apple products really. It looks a lot like Journey. So it's pretty much looks like what they're going for. There's actually been an update. So in a tweet, breaking news. So in a tweet, that game company clarified that Sky will launch first on Apple platforms. No other platforms were named.
That's
so maybe not just Apple, but maybe Apple first. That'd be smarter.
I mean, it's weird that he said, "Hey, we didn't say it was Apple exclusive. We just said it was Apple first."
Yeah,
and then someone was like, "Oh, well, what else is it going to come out on when it comes out on that later?" And there was just crickets.
Right, can't tell you. That's been a weird problem recently, as of like last 5 years. where it's like coming first exclusive on Xbox One, and then it's like, well, is it only on Xbox One? They're like, well, I mean, it's first exclusive, and then you find out later it's like, no, that just means it's going to be on Xbox One for like a month, and then it's going to come out on everything else. It's like, it's been a weird couple games. Like I think two of the Tomb Raider games did that. Newer Tomb Raider games that were just like, it was super fucking confusing with that stuff. But yeah, coming to Apple TV, which apparently has 4K capabilities, amazingly. And maybe some stuff later.
Oh, and I see he did an interview with the Dorito Pope, so that's nice.
Oh, the Dorito Pope, our Lord and Savior Jeff Kiley.
Yep. But
anyways, so yeah, good for them. Journey's a good game.
Earlier in the show, we were talking about shitty teenagers and how they contribute to video game culture. And, well, they're certainly contributing to Overwatch's video game culture, because in a developer update from, what is it, Jeff Kaplan, I believe his name is? Yes. Yep. Blizzard Vice President, Jeff Kaplan, we discovered that Overwatch has been getting less tweaks and updates because the staff has been spending the majority of their time attempting to police the toxic community of Overwatch. And he talked about how there's new implementation of reporting systems and how they definitely take these reports seriously of any kind of harassment of people on the site or on the game. And he's just trying to dedicate a lot of time and effort and resources to cleaning up the community and to making people feel welcome there and to making the game fun for everybody.
Good fucking luck.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Godspeed.
I give Blizzard a ton of credit because they are putting so much work into this.
Yeah.
Because we see other communities, like, I think one of the most infamous ones is League of Legends, who don't really bother to police their community very much, and as a result, it's just a cesspool. It's like real bad. So
PUBG is that way too, and I mean, I know that they're a small company, so it's hard to, and it's a growing monster, you know, so it's hard to, but if you play PUBG, that the airplane ride before you jump out is like the internet condensed into a loud screaming children, lots and lots of screaming children, because all 100 players can talk at the same time. So it's a fucking nightmare.
The way he closed the developer update was actually probably the saddest part of all, because he talks about how, you know, he starts off by saying we're going to implement better stuff and features and things, and we're going to devote all this time and resources to it, and we really care about this. And then at the end, he's like, and you know, it's really tough for us to do alone. It's also the community's responsibility to just not be mean and be mindful of the other players and be nice to everyone else. So please try and do that. And I'm just like, oh no, that's so sad.
It is sad, and it's true. I mean, like, it's unfortunate, but like, I can confirm playing Overwatch, it's a lot of it's turning into a cesspool, and it's simply because it's going to happen with any game. If you get a shit ton of children playing the same game, I mean, a shit ton of people play Overwatch, you know, like everyone plays Overwatch, and not even just kids, but just people in general are horrible when they have an anonymous kind of platform to say horrible things. And that's what's gonna happen. Good on them for taking this time, because a toxic fan base can ruin a game, because it is like, it's a disease. It just starts to eat, you know, any drive to want to play it, you know. Because there's a lot of times I've played Overwatch and I'm like, wow, that was a really unpleasant experience. I kind of don't want to play Overwatch. You know, like.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally true, and I think that it's good to me that they feel they have a responsibility to do this as a company, and I think that they definitely do, considering the fact that Overwatch is, you know, so massively popular, and it really sets the precedent for everybody else to be like, okay, this is, not only are we the gold standard for these kind of what would you qualify it as, like an
hero
arena
shooters
shooter or something?
I think they call it hero shooters.
Sure, okay. But not only are we the gold standard in that, in the sense that we have the most balanced game and the largest player base and all that stuff, but we also strive to have the best community, and I think it's glad that they prioritize that.
Yeah. You know, it totally is, and they need to do shit like that to kind of set an example.
So, what about Uncharted 4's co-director?
Uncharted 4 co-director Bruce Straley has left Naughty Dog. Not a long story, but it's just something that's kind of surprised me. But then when I thought about it, actually not that surprising. He wrote a long-ass letter talking about how he was leaving on good terms and everything. But one pull quote here is, after heading up 3 extremely demanding projects and taking some extended time away from the office, I found my energy focusing in other directions, and I slowly realized this was the signal that it's time to move on. He wrote on Naughty Dog's website. So he would be I think co-directed Uncharted 2, 3, 4, and The Last of Us. To some considered some of the best games ever made. I would not agree, but I'd still say that they're incredibly impressive, high bar standards for cinematic kind of action games. Yeah, he's leaving. And I can't blame him, because I'm sure that working on those games must be a fucking nightmare. Like, I'm sure that the crunch, the amount of detail that they put in those games, the amount of, attention to detail and stuff must be soul sucking. And I looked it up. He's only 38 too. And so
really?
I'm sure he's like, yeah. And I'm sure he's like, I gotta, like, if not now, when, kind of thing. It's like, if I want to do anything else, I gotta get out and do something else, because, like, they're working on Last of Us 2, and I think he's been on sabbatical for a while they've been working on Last of Us 2, so I don't think that he's involved in that production. He probably came back, looked at, like, the amount of work that is going to be needed to do that one, 4 years of time or whatever, and he's just like, nah, I'm gonna do something else. So we'll see. I think it's interesting because, Naughty Dog's just been on such a winning streak for so long that losing one of the co-directors will definitely shape the games in some way or another. It'll be interesting to see how.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested to see how their next games come out without his influence and his future projects.
Yep. Still got Neil Druckmann in there, the man with the beautiful hair.
Ooh, yeah, that's important. So, moving to our last topic of the day. Nintendo Switch. Yes, Nintendo Switch had a Nintendo Direct, 45-minute one. I think it was pretty beefy. This past week. I don't remember what day it was. September 13th. It
was only a couple days ago.
Yeah. I watched the whole thing. A lot of it was very boilerplate. Here's the games that you already knew we were working on. Yep. Here's like a little update on them, or here's games that are already out and there's some DLC for them. It was good in the sense that those 45 minutes were jam-packed with stuff. They had lots of little things to talk about. And then they gave like a really long trailer for Xenoblade Chronicles 2 with like an really old man narrator.
Why was that trailer so long?
It was it discussed how combat worked. Like, it was a tutorial.
It was. They showed you the tutorial.
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny because, like, they're going through the whole thing. They're like, this is the... And I was like, wow, that's a lot of lore. It's cool. It's a lot of lore. And then they're like, by the way, I'm a dinosaur, an old dinosaur man. Let's talk some more. I was like, what the fuck is going on?
Let me go into detail about how every aspect of combat works.
Yeah. Here's weirdly dressed children running around. Yep. Yeah, this is very strange.
So that was really long, and then they had a really long thing about Mario Odyssey, which was funny because there was like Mario at the beach and his nips were out, and there was like
that shit looks awesome, though.
Yeah, that was funny.
If that game pulls off all the shit that they're trying to do, like, holy fuck.
I think the Mario games do not often disappoint, especially when they put this much time into them. So I think it's probably going to. So good on them. But the thing that came out of total left field, and if you're watching our stream, you already know what it is because I've had the article up. But the thing in that direct, that came out a total left field, no one was expecting it, was the Bethesda stuff. And when they first started talking about the Bethesda stuff, they said, hey, guess what? Skyrim's coming to Switch, and we can tell you when it's coming. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And then they said, hey, and 2 other Bethesda games are coming to Switch too. And my ears perked up, and I was like, what are these 2 games? What's going on? Those 2 games are Doom and Wolfenstein 2, the new Colossus, will be coming to Switch.
Yeah.
I think...
Who knew?
I think this is a really, really big deal.
Yes.
Not only just because Wolfenstein 2 looks incredible, and I'm happy to see it on more platforms, and not just because Doom is incredible.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to see it on more platforms, but because when we saw that Skyrim was going to be on there, I said, oh, well, I mean, I guess it's good that the Switch is going to have a third-party game that people like. but it's not a new game.
No.
And it's
a very old game.
Yeah, it's old. I mean, people keep buying it, but it's not anything like it's like on everything at this point. So
yeah.
But to have newer games like Doom and a game that hasn't come out yet, so a AAA title that has yet to be released coming out on the Switch.
A AAA first-person shooter.
Yes, that's a
Two AAA
huge deal.
Yeah, that's a massive deal. And I think this is... I've talked about it before, but Nintendo lives or dies on how much third-party support it can get. Because it is obviously doesn't have the processing power that the other guys got. So they're always doing something a little weird. You know, I'd say the Switch is probably the most conventional system they've made in a while. Besides the handheld stuff. But they cannot stay alive. They cannot thrive with their own games alone. They need bigger AAA games on their system. And I think it's very telling that Bethesda, who we talk about, it seems like all the time for one reason or another, they make a lot of weird choices, but they make interesting choices. You know, not all of them pan out, like with the paid DLC shit, or the paid mod stuff. But I think they're definitely a company that likes to do strange things, and they probably look at the Switch and are like, yeah, we can make this work, at least to some degree, you know, and we like playing on it, so fuck it, yeah, we'll put our games out on there.
Yeah.
And I think it's great that, because for a long time, Nintendo, this cycle with the Switch, to me, is looking like the Super Nintendo more than anything else. Where it's like you had games like Doom coming out on Super Nintendo.
Definitely. No, I was thinking N64, but I totally get what you're saying there. Yeah. To me, this represents three big things. One, it represents that, yes, modern AAA titles can come out on the Switch, which is something that a lot of people have said just can't happen. Now
it looks downgraded. And
yeah, like, we may see Doom and Wolfenstein 2, and they, like, don't hold up to their versions on PC or console. That may be
it's not going to look like my $2,000 PC version. Okay.
No, but what, like the earliest reports, if the Nintendo Direct is to be believed, and they might have doctored things a little bit, but the footage from Doom that appears in the Nintendo Direct, people did side-by-side comparisons of that with PS4, and it looks like basically as good.
Sure.
And
you're going to be playing it on a small screen anyways.
Yeah. Well, I mean, unless it's plugged into your TV.
Yeah. But why would you do that when you have the Switch?
Yeah. Then you snap your fingers.
Yeah.
So
they did a lot of that at the press conference.
That's really impressive, and I'm sure that when when people are doing comparisons of New Colossus on PC versus Switch, New Colossus won't look as good. Sure, but if it still looks good, even if it doesn't look great, that sends a signal to a lot of game companies that your AAA titles can go on this system, and it's going to work. So that's the one thing it represents. I said three things, and I can't remember all three of them right now. But another big one is the idea of specifically these two titles and bringing them to the Switch. What kind of titles they are?
Yeah. So hyper-violent, weird first-person shooters.
Yes. So first-person shooter is one thing, but I think you really are hitting on something when you say hyper-violent, because Nintendo, for the longest time in recent history, has this image of being super squeaky clean and child-friendly, and they've really embraced that. And when Skyrim was announced that it was going to be on here, I thought, okay, well, Skyrim is not like hyper violent or offensive to anyone.
No,
it's just more violent than most Nintendo games.
Yes, exactly. It's fantasy violence.
But nobody can make the argument that Doom and Wolfenstein 2 aren't the polar opposite in terms of subject matter of every Nintendo game. And that's why I said it reminded me back of the N64 era, or as you said, the SNES era, because
maybe both of them kind of clump them together.
Because back then, that was when third parties could put brutal stuff on a Nintendo system, and it was still something that could happen. Because it seems like after that, those kind of games just disappeared off Nintendo systems for a long time.
They did. And I think it was the late 90s, or mid to late 90s from Super Nintendo to N64. There were no other big consoles, like they were dominating
Yeah.
for a long time. So they were dominating in a way that they would be dumb not to take the opportunity to have a game like Doom with its red cartridge, on the Super Nintendo, which was fucking awesome. I loved having that cartridge.
Yeah.
But it's like you'd be stupid not to have that. You'd be stupid not to have Mortal Kombat and shit like that on there. Because you were just, the top console. And I think that Nintendo is trying to if optics mean anything, it seems like they're trying to position themselves to be that again, where it's like they see their numbers blowing through the roof. They know that they're going to be they're going to go they're going to rise so high this fucking holiday. It's going to be insane. They're going to sell so much shit. Yeah. It's like they are going to be competing with the big guys again, and it's like I think they know that. I think they're being smart for once in a blue moon. They're being smart. That they're like, we gotta have the good third party support if we're going to be big, not just Nintendo big like they've been for so long, and not just like the Wii, which was a fluke, but it's like if we want to be real actually big, then we have to have these kind of things available, because I'm sure it'll be fun as fuck to play Doom on a handheld. That must be great.
It's gonna be awesome. I wanted to buy a Switch before, but now I am definitely buying a Switch so that I can play Doom on it, because that's awesome.
Yeah, and Wolfenstein 2, I'm sure will be great on it too. And it's like we were saying before we started the show, and I don't know if it's mentioned here, but another thing that showed up during the Nintendo Direct was L.A. Noire. Which is an old game. It's a great game. I liked it a lot.
Yep.
But it's coming out to the Switch, and it's like, weird choice, I think. But at the same time, I think it's interesting that now Rockstar is willing to work with Nintendo. Yep. That's a big fucking step. And I would not be surprised. I would not be one bit surprised if Grand Theft Auto 5 comes to the Switch in some form or another. Because, I mean, they're the best-selling game ever, as we learn.
And they'll always look for an excuse to sell more copies of it.
Exactly. And so they will sell more copies on the Switch.
So, yeah, I think what we were talking about a couple weeks ago with how the Switch is going to be a great indie machine for indie games, which has so far proven out to be the case. I saw a quick report earlier this week that I also didn't have time to put in the show, but I'll mention it really quick now, that a lot of indie devs are talking about how their sales on the Switch are significantly higher than their sales anywhere else.
I'm sure.
How it's been great for them. So I think that if Wolfenstein 2 on the Switch looks as good as I'm hoping it will, and assuming it's also a really good game, which I have no reason to doubt that at this point, if that comes out on the Switch and is great on it and is a great game, that is going to be the turning point where a lot of other developers, like your Rockstars, like a lot of Sony people are going to, or people who usually work with Sony, people like Naughty Dog are going to turn around and say like, yeah, we should start making AAA titles for the Switch.
Yeah, Naughty Dog won't because they're a first part.
Oh, they are, aren't they? Sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, I get your point. Yeah. People like them.
So
and I think it's like it's going to be a big turnaround for them if it happens. I definitely think so.
Good Nintendo, you did the right thing. To close out the story, a few quick caveats and some more details. Doom,
because there always is with Nintendo.
Yes. Well, technically there's with Bethesda, but Doom is coming out in the holiday season. Wolfenstein 2 is going to be available in 2018. Now that's only going to be disappointing because we have no idea when in 2018, and Wolfenstein 2 is coming out for everything else at the end of October. So we could have to wait as much as like a year or over a year to see it on the Switch, and I could see that being, not so beneficial, but even so.
I'm surprised that they didn't have Doom and Wolfenstein 1 available at the same time and then have Wolfenstein 2 later down the road.
Yeah, I'm maybe Doom is like a test case, and if it sells really well, then they'll probably find a way to port Wolfenstein 1 onto there.
Yeah, and even like they'd probably try to put Dishonored on there too, and some other stuff they have.
Also, Doom on the Switch will include, all the single player stuff and all the DLC, but it will not include Snap Map, which is the map editor that's in Doom, which
I can understand that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, it's kind of a bummer because I think that's one of the more creative things they added to Doom, but yeah, I get it. Let's see, was there anything else I want to mention? Speculation, but I'm pretty sure that when we were doing that stupid story about Bethesda and what's his name, Pete Hines,
Yeah.
And how he said he let slip in an interview that there was going to be something people didn't know about that Bethesda was working on. And then he went to Twitter and said, nope, that wasn't true. There was actually an update to that story before the Nintendo Direct where he said, oh no, my tweet was totally a joke. Didn't you guys realize that? And I was like, Pete Hines, shut up. Go away.
Give it up. Well, I have there's been interesting theories floating around NeoGAF, as there usually are.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is that Bethesda is in bed with Nintendo now and is actually making the new Metroid Prime game.
Ah, maybe.
Which I don't believe one second.
I don't think so. But
it's an interesting theory, nonetheless. And that's the new game that they've been talking about that they say no one knows about. Is a new Metroid Prime game coming from Bethesda Studios. I don't believe that for one.
So good. Good on you, Nintendo. Now that we are out of time, we are going to talk about the games that just came out and the games that are about to come out. So, games that just came out include Divinity Original Sin 2. So far, reviews are very, very good. A lot of sites have not put up full reviews yet because there's just so much content and they want to make sure it's all playthrough. That's fair. This is Larian Studios, another great example of a company that went to Kickstarter because they needed that money to make their game, and they're delivering for the fans, which is always nice. Yep.
I'm probably going to play that this weekend, actually.
Oh, do it, yeah. What else is going on here?
Dishonored
Death of the Outsider for the Windows, the PS4, and the Xbone.
The Windows.
That came out today. Metroid Samus Returns for the 3DS, the remake of the Game Boy game. Looks great. People are saying it plays really well, so that's cool. NBA Live 18, sure, whatever.
Why not? That's actually coming to Switch, too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wait, is that the one that is?
Or was that 2K something?
I think it might be the 2K one. Yeah.
Coming up soon, we have the Solus Project. I don't know what that is. I don't know what any of these things
Muv-Love
are.
Alternative. The fuck is Muv-Love Alternative?
Zing! The Land Beyond. Echo on the 19th. And
the dolphin?
Yeah, I go the dolphin. No, I don't know. And I think probably most importantly on the 19th, we have two big titles, NBA 2K18, which is coming out for the Switch on the 19th, and also Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite coming out for the Windows, the PS4, and the Xbone. That game, I'm sure it'll play really well, but all of the story, like cutscene stuff I've watched is the most cringe-inducing stuff I've ever seen.
All of my fighting game friends, and you have fighting game friends too, you know that they are fickle people. Mm-hmm. Pretty much say this is baby game shit, baby game.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the consensus.
I guess they'll just stick to their Street Fighters then.
I guess so.
Or their older
they love
Marvel
to complain about as well,
Capcoms.
so nothing can really work.
Well, we'll just have to see next week when Infinite comes out whether it's a baby game or something worthy of the fighting community.
Yeah. I will say too, interesting thing about NBA 2K18, it is coming at the full version, like non dumbed down versions coming to Switch, and they released what you need for that. And it's the save files for that are going to be 5 gigabytes large, and there's a 32 gigabyte day one download that you're going to need memory card space for.
Ooh, so, hope you got an SD card, big old SD card
big
for that Switch.
Big fat old SD card, yeah.
Oh man, that's actually one of the games that, or maybe not that specifically, but that's one of the games I kind of want to get for Switch when I get a Switch because I have very fond memories of playing couch co-op. Like NBA like 95, and I know that it doesn't look anything like that, and it probably doesn't really play anything like that. If there was an indie game studio that just basically remade NBA Jam 95, I would be all over that in a heartbeat. But
I remember the NHL games, in one of the most recent ones, they added an NHL 94 version, so all of the controls turned into just like A and B again.
Sweet.
Pretty great.
So yeah, that's the show. We have been Chris and Lex. This has been Don't Copy That Floppy, a video game news podcast broadcasting live on Fridays, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/DCTF podcast. You can find us on social media such as Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, Steam, YouTube, iTunes, all those good places. You can follow us, subscribe to us, all that stuff. Usually you can find us by searching DCTF podcast or Don't Copy That Floppy podcast. You'll find it. It's not that difficult. As long as you can get past the videos of the original Don't Copy That Floppy thing, you'll find us on there.
I can't blame you if you don't.
Yeah. So yeah, we're going to be back next week with more spicy video game industry news. Chris, where can people find you outside of the show?
They can find me at my Twitter, which is a hub of all the interesting things I do. I write about video games sometimes, I play music sometimes, I dungeon master Dungeons and Dragons quite often. And you can find all that stuff at my Twitter, which is HearMeGomez8. That's at HearMeGomez number 8.
Nice. So that is the whole show. Thanks for watching. And until next time, Chris, what do they have to remember?
Oh, please don't copy that floppy.